Chapter 53, It's a Fine Day for a White Wedding. Casterly Rock, 294 AC. Loras had just finished breakfast with his family and had shown Marjorie the way to Jon's room. After that, he brought Joy to her lessons and was pleasantly surprised when Sansa agreed to join them. As he was heading back to his own room, Walder stopped him and asked him to follow. He led Loras to another room and instructed him to wait, mentioning that he would be meeting someone shortly. Sitting there, Loras couldn't help but wonder what was happening. He and Walder hadn't spent much time together unless Jon was around. A twinge of annoyance crept in as he thought about his friend. Ever since their return from the north, Jon had seemed too busy to see him. Loras felt left out once again, especially knowing there was something brewing between Jon and Marjorie. Jon needed him to look after Sansa, and while he didn't mind spending time with her, he missed his friend. Lost in thought, Loras barely noticed when a man walked in. He was tall and tanned, with striking deep purple eyes that held Loras's gaze. "Do you know who I am?" the man asked. Loras nodded. "You're the Sword of the Morning, Ser Arthur Dayne," he replied, a smile spreading across his face at the thought of speaking to a legend. "I am. It's good to meet you, Loras. I've heard a lot about you from Walder here, among others," Arthur said. Loras could hardly breathe. The legendary knight knew of him. "I wanted to meet you, to speak to you, as I'll be looking after the king's protection from now on." "You'll be staying here?" Loras asked, intrigued. "I will. Along with Jaime, I will be handling your training from now on," Arthur replied. Loras stared at him in disbelief. You'll be training me?" His voice trembled slightly. "You and the king, yes." Loras sat there in shock, the realization sinking in. He would be trained by the Sword of the Morning, spending his days learning from the greatest swordsman alive, perhaps the greatest warrior ever. The annoyance Loras felt just moments ago regarding Jon had vanished, replaced by an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Thanks to Jon, he had already trained under Jaime Lannister and now had the chance to learn from Arthur Dayne. He could hardly contain his excitement, though he suspected that the training wouldn't begin right away with so many guests at the Rock. "I look forward to it, Ser Arthur." "Wait, can I use your name, Ser?" Loras asked. Arthur smiled. "My name is Daeron Sand, Loras. Did I not mention that?" Loras chuckled. "My apologies, Daeron." After a few more minutes of conversation, Arthur asked Loras to show him around the Rock. Accompanied by Walder, they embarked on a tour. Loras was already familiar with the maesters and smiths, but he could sense that Arthur was most intrigued by the stables and the armory. In that moment, Loras felt a kinship with him. He too had felt the same excitement when he first arrived. When they reached the guards' quarters to find where Jorah and Walder slept, Loras was taken aback by the layout. Walder and Jorah shared a set of 3 rooms, 2 large bedchambers and a sitting room furnished with chairs, a table, and some books. For some reason, Loras had assumed they would have their own quarters. But upon seeing Arthur's approving smile at the arrangement, he felt compelled to ask. "Daeron, shouldn't the quarters be separate?" "Walder and Jorah are acting as Kingsguard, Loras. It's a brotherhood. In White Sword Tower, we each had our own bedchambers, but those are just simple rooms for sleeping. The common areas are used by all, which helps foster that brotherhood," Arthur explained, a warm smile gracing his face. Once the tour concluded, they took the lift back to the family wing. To Loras's surprise, just moments after entering, he found Jon looking for him. Ghost, along with the black and gray pups, walked alongside him. Standing at Jon's right shoulder, Jorah nodded to Walder and then to Arthur. Kingsguard, Loras thought, as he took in the scene. Excitedly, the men were Jon's Kingsguard. "There you are. I see you've met our new trainer," Jon said, smiling as he nodded to Arthur. I have. "I look forward to sparring," Loras replied eagerly. Well, you'll get to do it before I will, Jon said, motioning to his injured arm. I'm sorry, Jon. Maybe I should wait? Don't be an idiot, Loras. I can see how excited you are. Anyway, there's something I need to show you. Can you come with me? Jon smiled. What is it? Loras asked, a hint of excitement still in his voice at the thought of training with Ser Arthur. You'll see. Walder, can you show Arthur the rock? Daeron, for now. Jon, Loras was good enough to show me already. I was wondering if I could borrow yours for a bit. Though, Walder can take over his duties for now, Arthur replied, and Jon nodded in agreement. Anything I need to know? Jon asked. No, just that Jors may know where I can find some of that dye we talked about, Arthur said, and Jon nodded to Jors. The two groups then separated, with Arthur and Jors heading to the lift while Jon, Walder, and Loras walked toward Jon's room. Loras really wanted to ask Jon about his meeting with Margaery. It was on the tip of his tongue, but he decided to wait. Jon would tell him in his own time, no doubt. When they reached the room, Jon held his hand out to stop Loras from walking in. Loras looked at him, confused, and shook his head. I wanted to thank you. What I did last night, I wouldn't have been able to do without you looking after Sansa. I know it may seem like I've been ignoring you, but that's not the case, I swear. What you're about to see, had there been another way, well, this wouldn't be the first time you'd see her, Jon said before opening the door. Loras felt a rush of relief that Jon hadn't been ignoring him. He knew it, but it was good to hear it from his friend. The rest confused him, at least until he stepped into the room. There, on Jon's bed, she stood, and she was magnificent. With wings the brightest blue and scales as white as snow, the dragon looked at Jon and chirped. Loras, stunned, turned to Jon, his mouth agape in shock. Relax, Loras. She won't harm you, Jon reassured him, glancing at the dragon as he wrapped his arm around Loras's shoulder. Jon, that's how. I mean, when. How? Jon, that's a dragon. Loras stumbled over his words, and Jon chuckled. I know. Loras, meet Rhaenys. Rhaenys, this is Loras, my friend. Jon guided Loras closer to the dragon. Meanwhile, in his solar, Jaime sat deep in thought. Tyrion had offered to join him, but Jaime preferred to give his brother the space to read the book he kept glancing at. He could tell Tyrion was distracted. The thrill of unraveling a mystery had always excited him, and now he had one right in front of him. So, Jaime had encouraged him to read while he invited Jenna to join him instead. As they sat together, Jenna shared her own meeting with the Queen of Thorns. Jaime pondered how he had managed to pull the wool over her eyes. It was a mystery to him now. At least she seemed to be moving in the direction he hoped. However, it seemed she hadn't uncovered the truth about the Targaryens in Essos. Given what Arthur had said about Viserys, he had no doubt she would have scrutinized Jon more closely. Relieved that Sandor had been sent to the princess, he knew there was one thing the Hound would never tolerate: a brother mistreating his sister. My lord, Lady Olenna is outside, Pharaoh announced. Show her in, Jaime replied. A moment later, Olenna entered, her cane tapping rhythmically against the floor as she approached the table. Jaime stood to pull out a chair for her and offered her some fruit and wine, which she declined. They would be serving themselves here, so he poured his aunt a glass before sitting back down beside her. After a brief moment of awkward silence, Olenna studied both of them before suddenly breaking into laughter. I've rarely ever been played so well. It's good to know the king is in such capable hands, she said, her eyes twinkling. Jaime smirked in response. The king himself is more than capable, my lady. That he is. A remarkable boy. He'll make the best king we've had in ages. He will, Jaime replied, smiling. With the right queen? Olenna asked, raising an eyebrow. Do you have someone in mind, Olenna? Jenna chimed in, and the two women exchanged knowing smirks. In another day, in another life, I'd be offering myself, Olenna said with a nod. Well, shall we get down to it then? We should, my lady, Jaime agreed. Is there proof other than the letter John showed me? Olenna inquired, her tone serious. Jaime handed her the marriage and birth announcements along with the annulment papers. He said Elia aside. Olenna asked, surprise evident in her voice. I believe there's more to it than that. John has a letter from her to her brothers, Jaime explained. You've read this letter? Olenna pressed. No, it's still sealed. But I think it explains things, Jaime replied. What do you intend to do with it? She asked, her curiosity piqued. It's not my place, John will decide. But given that Oberyn is here, he may give it to him sooner rather than later. That may not be the best idea. What if it's not what you think? Or what if it is, and Oberyn doesn't accept it, she cautioned. John has been weighing those possibilities, my lady. You have a lot of faith in a young boy, my lord. It's been well earned, my lady, Jaime said with a smile. Olenna glanced through the letters again, finally satisfied. She handed them back to Jaime, who placed them in the drawer. Noticing her empty glass, he poured her a fresh glass of wine. Firstly, I wish to know who else we will have on our side. Is it our side? He asked, intrigued. Will the king be seeking a different bride? Olenna asked pointedly. He will not, my lady, Jaime assured her. Olenna smiled broadly. Then, my lord, it's our side. So, that's all you want? Jenna asked, surprised. A seat on the council, along with some considerations and appointments we can discuss later. But yes, those are the main ones, a seat on the council and Marjorie to become queen, Olenna replied. Not Mace, perhaps Willis? Jaime suggested, and Olenna nodded. Definitely not Mace, she confirmed. Then we are in agreement. The Reach will declare for Jaehaerys Targaryen, the third of his name? Jenna inquired. We are, and we do. Now, about our strengths, if you please, Jaime said. We have the West and the North, along with Derry and Valerion. We can bring in more allies over time, but the more houses we reach out to, the greater the risk. We could take it now if needed, but I'd prefer to wait until John is older. There's another reason why waiting may be prudent, Jaime explained. And that is? Olenna asked. A dragon, Jaime revealed, causing both women to gasp. Jaime? Jenna said. I'm sorry for telling you like this, Aunt, but it happened last night. You're serious? This isn't a jest. Olenna asked, her tone shifting. I am, my lady. Perhaps later I can have John introduce you to her. Her? Jenna echoed. Rhaenys. He named her after his sister, Jaime said, deciding now was not the time to share more details. Only a dragon knows a dragon, Olenna laughed, and Jaime joined in, reminiscing. What? Jenna asked, puzzled. Rhaegar used to say that. It was something Rhaenys taught him, Jaime replied, a soft smile on his face. After discussing the dragon for a bit longer, Olenna shifted the conversation to the attack in the Riverlands and offered her own perspective, one that made Jaime grip the table tightly. This attack John spoke of, you're sure it wasn't just bandits? Olenna asked. I am, he replied. John said he has a man looking into it. A man? Jaime wondered, curious about how much John had revealed to her. A man he wouldn't name, Olenna confirmed. Olenna wore a small, proud smile on her face. He has, Jaime replied. Have him look into the Tullus, Olenna said, shocking him. What? Why would they? Jenna asked before Jaime could respond. Given what John did to Edmure in King's Landing, and how far some men can go when their pride is hurt, especially by someone they see as far beneath them. I think they could be likely suspects, Olenna explained. Jon is beneath no one, Jenna said angrily. I know, Jenna, but to Edmure, he's just a bastard, a stain on his sister, Olenna countered. But he wouldn't try to kill him, surely? Jaime asked, gripping the table tightly, ready to break something if not for his aunt's calming hand on his. Perhaps not, but I would look into it all the same, Olenna insisted. I'll see it done, Jaime said, resolving to have Richard handle it immediately before anything else. Have you increased his guards and my grandson's? After all, he could have been caught up in this too, Olenna said, her voice rising in pitch. Jaime smiled, understanding her eagerness now. He had thought it was solely about Jon and Margaery, but it was also about Loras. It was sheer luck that had kept him out of the firing line. Had Loras been there, who knew what might have happened? We've assigned Jon a new guard. The giant man you've seen with him, Ser Walder, he was the one who saved him. One guard? There must be more, Olenna insisted. There is someone else, someone I believe should ease your fears, my lady. Who? Olenna asked, her curiosity piqued. Ser Arthur Dayne, Jaime said, prompting gasps from both women. The Sword of the Morning, he lives. Olenna exclaimed, swallowing her wine in surprise. He is here as we speak, my lady, Jaime confirmed, sensing his aunt's disapproval for not having informed her earlier. Then we should drink to our new arrangement, Olenna said as Jaime poured them both another glass of wine. To the rightful king, Jaime said. The rightful king, Olenna and Jenna echoed. Dinner that night had been pleasant. Tyrion had excused himself, claiming he had some reading to do, and Jerian opted for an early night. So it was just Olenna, Jaime, Jenna, her children, her husband, Loras, Jon, and the girls. Olenna found herself laughing repeatedly as Jon made up for lost time with the girls by entertaining them at the table. Even Jenna's two boys joined in the fun. When Jon began telling stories of knights and princesses, of tournaments and justs, she understood what had drawn Joy to grab his hand every night for story time. Jon was a natural bard. He could sing and play the harp, and he had a unique ability to bring stories to life. It was something she had heard Jaime say about his father too. The difference, however, was that while Rhaegar had been melancholic, Jon was happy and full of life. Still, she remembered the sullen, quiet boy she had met in Winterfell all those years ago. They retired early that night, being among the first to leave. Olenna realized she enjoyed drinking less since coming to the Rock. Whether it was the excitement of sharing her husband's bed or just her general contentment, she couldn't tell. But there was always one great advantage to going to bed early with Jaime, and as she felt him take her in his arms, she looked forward to it, as she always did. The next morning, she was dressing and preparing to ride to Lannisport to greet the new arrivals. While she usually hated this part of being a lady, on this occasion, she found herself enjoying it. Her cousin, his wife, and their babe were arriving today, along with Ser Wendell Manderly. Though Lynesse had said she would come, a part of Olenna assumed that with the babe, she would decide to stay in Bear Island. Perhaps if it weren't for the Pinnacle ships, she might have chosen to stay as well. Now there's a vision, Jaime said as she finished dressing. You really are easily pleased, she joked. If only you were, he replied with mock seriousness. Jaime, she sighed, her voice rising. What? Is it that time already? Must I fulfill my husbandly duties yet again? He replied, rolling his eyes. She couldn't help but laugh at his antics. You really are an idiot. No, I'm your idiot, he said, kissing her neck. She kissed him back, and together they walked down to the awaiting carriages. She would have preferred to ride, but not in this dress. So, she climbed into one of the carriages and found Sansa, Margaery, and Joy waiting inside, with Jon sitting next to Margaery. As they set off, she noticed Jon open the window, and Joy climbed up to look out. Daisy watched as Jon held her tight, both Sansa and Marjorie looking on as he pointed out various sights. "No birdie, Jon? No pretty birdie?" Joy asked, shaking her head. "We'll see them at the ship, Joy." "We'll see a babe too," he replied, and Daisy smiled at the thought of seeing Lyness and her son. They arrived just moments before the ship docked, and she watched eagerly as the vessel came in. Wendell, Yora, and Lyness stood on deck, and then she spotted it, Lyness cradling the little bundle who was now the heir of Bear Island. As they stepped off the ship and made their way toward them, she wasn't the only one straining to catch a glimpse. The other girls were equally eager to see the babe Lyness was carrying. After the introductions, Daisy finally got a good look at the boy, and she couldn't help but smile. He was so small, so tiny. Beside her, Marjorie, Sansa, and Joy kept glancing at both him and Lyness as if they were gifts from the gods. A child, she thought, a babe. Maybe it was the gods who gifted them this moment. Looking at the perfect little being in Lyness's arms, it felt like only the gods could create something so wondrous. "He's a wonder, Lyness," she said, smiling as she handed the babe back to his mother. "Aye, he is. What's his name?" "Gerald, after my grand-uncle," Lyness said, glancing at Jon before looking back. He nodded in response. She turned to see Yora engaged in conversation with Jaime, Jon, and Wendell. After a few moments, they made their way to the carriages. Jon bid farewell to Sansa, Joy, and finally Marjorie. Both she and Lyness watched as he shared a laugh with the two of them before he departed. He, Loras, and Geryon would remain behind to greet the Velaryons, Lord Darry, and Lady Brienne, who was arriving later with her father. As they rode back, the girls took turns switching seats to sit closer to Lyness and the baby. Lyness couldn't stop laughing as each girl cooed at him. Sansa was undoubtedly pondering something to embroider for the little one, while Marjorie looked on in awe. Joy chimed in, telling the baby he could join story time and meet Balon, a detail she would need to remind Lyness about. Upon returning to the Rock, Daisy helped Lyness and Yora settle in. Wendell was to be housed there instead of in town, and he was incredibly pleased to receive such an honor. Once that was taken care of, she joined the girls for her final dress fitting. The gown was even more beautiful than the one she had worn in Winterfell. "Are you looking forward to the ceremony, my lady?" Marjorie asked. "I am, Lady Marjorie, though I'm a little nervous." "But you're already married?" Sansa interjected. "I'm nervous about the ceremony, Sansa," Daisy replied with a smirk. "Oh," Sansa said, looking a bit embarrassed. "Your dress is so pretty, Daisy," Joy said, admiring it as it hung nearby. "You're going to look so beautiful, Lady Daisy," Marjorie added, and Daisy smiled, hoping that tomorrow's ceremony would go off without a hitch. Meanwhile, Jon laughed and joked with Loras and Geryon while they waited. He was pleased to learn that the Velaryons had been invited to accompany Lady Joanna along with Brienne and her father, Lord Raymond. As seasoned seamen, they were excited to join the festivities. Jon felt a thrill at the prospect of sailing on the magnificent ship. Arthur and Walder stood behind him, while Jors was taking a break and had the rest of the day off. Although they hadn't finalized a proper schedule, things had become much easier with Arthur by his side. Even if Jon disliked the helm Arthur wore, it felt wrong for him to cover himself like that. "Do you know Lord Montfort d'Aron?" Jon asked. "I do, Jon, though not as well as some," Arthur replied. Jon recalled that Richard was closer to the Lord of Driftmark. "What about Lord Darry?" "I know Raymond well. I look forward to speaking with him," Arthur said, a hint of sadness in his voice. Jon understood that he was thinking of his former brother and Ser Willem. Lord Darry would be arriving with the Velaryons, as it was easier to travel to King's Landing and then onward rather than making the long journey overland to Casterly Rock. They lingered for a few more minutes, and Jon closed his eyes. Ghost was guarding the room alongside Fawn, while the black pup, Renix, played with the two smaller wolves. Jon had been cautious about introducing his wolf to his sister, but she sensed their bond as soon as he entered the room. "He is like me, brother," she said. "Bonded to you. He will protect you, even at the cost of his own life." "He shouldn't, and neither should you." "You both mean too much to me," Jon replied, stroking Ghost before doing the same to Rhaenys. "Ghost, this is Rhaenys, my sister." The wolf cocked his head, while Rhaenys chirped something Jon couldn't quite understand. "What did you say?" he asked her. "It was between me and Ghost, and not for you," his sister answered, and Jon knew that was all he would get. She had chirped and played first with Ghost, who then introduced her to the other wolves. They seemed wary at first, but soon all of them were playing and making happy sounds. Jon nearly doubled over with laughter at the screech she let out when one of the wolves licked her. He could honestly say he now knew what a disgusted chirp sounded like. "They're here," he announced. Loras watched as the ship pulled into the harbor, and Jon couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. The first passengers to disembark were a tall man with silver hair and a younger companion he recognized. The taller man was undoubtedly Lord Montfort, and the younger one was Oberyn. Jon smiled at both of them, but his gaze soon caught sight of Lord Derry behind them. Next came Brienne, accompanied by an older man Jon assumed was her father. When she spotted him and Loras, her face lit up with a bright smile, but it faltered for a moment when she noticed his injury. "My lords, welcome to Lannisport," Geryon announced as Lord Montfort approached him. "I thank you, Lord Geryon, for the warm welcome," Montfort replied, then turned to Loras and introduced himself before stepping in front of Jon. "You must be Jon. It's a pleasure to meet the designer of such a fine ship." "Truly, it is." His eyes sparkled as he seemed to find familiar features in Jon's face, perhaps seeking a resemblance to his father. "You too, Lord Valerion. I've heard many tales of your family's history with the sea and other adventures. If you're not busy later, perhaps we could discuss it?" Jon suggested. "I would be honored to speak of family history, Jon." "Truly honored," Montfort replied, his smile growing even wider. "Lord Oberyn, it's good to see you again," Jon said. "You too, Jon." "You too," Oberyn responded, smiling back. "Lord Raymond, my guard has shared some intriguing stories about your family. Perhaps the three of us could chat later, if you have time?" Jon asked, glancing at Daeron, who was now staring intently at Raymond. "I would like that, Jon." "I would like that very much," Raymond replied. Arthur leaned in to whisper in Jon's ear, and he had to commend the man for hiding his shock well, though a smile crept onto Jon's face. "Of course, Ser Daeron. Any friend of my brother's is welcome to sup with me," Jon said warmly. After Geryon spoke with Lord Selwyn and Brienne, the old lord turned his attention to Loras, as did Brienne, before finally approaching Jon. "Lord Selwyn, I welcome you to Lannisport on behalf of Lord Jaime, who, as you can understand, is in the—" As they entered the final stages of preparing for his wedding, Selwyn turned to Jon. "He asked me to pass along his regards and mentioned that he will speak to you upon your arrival at Casterly Rock." "I understand, lad. I hope it wasn't him who gave you those injuries," Selwyn said with a laugh, though Brienne did not share in the humor. "If only, my lord. Unfortunately, it was a far more serious affair. Shall we make our way to the carriage?" Jon replied, sensing Selwyn's mood shift as his smile faded. Selwyn nodded in response. "Lady Brienne, it's a pleasure to see you again," Jon said, offering her a reassuring smile as she looked at him almost apologetically over her father's joke. "You too, Jon," she replied, smiling back at him. They walked toward the carriages, and Jon engaged both Brienne and her father in conversation. While Selwyn didn't interrogate him, he peppered Jon with questions about the Rock, the Lannisters, and how he had been treated. Selwyn seemed pleased with Jon's answers, while Brienne appeared more interested in the upcoming tourney. When her father asked if she would be allowed to compete, Jon quickly reassured him. My lord, do you know much about Lord Jaime's new wife? I don't, other than her name and that she is from the north, John. The ladies of Bear Island are fierce, my lord. They have to be, as the Ironborn have tried to prey on their lands for years. Men fish, and women fight, as Lady Meege explained it to me. Lady Dacey epitomizes that spirit. She even competed in the melee in King's Landing and made it to the final four. Aye, she did, Brienne said, finally connecting the name with the woman she had seen fighting. So, my lord, even if Lord Jaime were of a mind to forbid your daughter from competing, which he is not, Lady Dacey would certainly insist upon it, John added, and Lord Selwyn nodded in agreement. That's good to know, John. Once they were ready, they took their places in the carriage and set off for the rock. Sitting with Brienne and Lord Selwyn, John shared stories of his own routines and what Brienne could expect. As they arrived, John watched the excitement grow on Brienne's face. Once they settled in, he had their belongings brought to their rooms and showed Brienne where she would be staying during her time at Casterly Rock. To her surprise, she learned she would be in the family wing with Loras. I'm to stay here? Brienne said, smiling. Aye, this is where Loras and I stay, John replied. I'll leave you to get settled and inform Lord Jaime of your arrival, my lord, my lady. I'm sure he'll want to speak with both of you before dinner. Thank you, John, Loras, Brienne said, and the two of them left her to refresh after their journey. That evening, Brienne joined them for dinner, her father sitting at the high table with Jaime, his family, and the Tyrells, much to his delight. Although she was nervous at first, Brienne soon found herself laughing with John and Loras. Sansa and Joy initially regarded her with curious looks, and John worried they might say something to upset her. But when Marjorie began speaking to Brienne, both girls quickly followed her lead. John tried to balance his attention among them, but he knew he ended up talking far more with Marjorie than the others. John, story time. Joy exclaimed, prompting a giggle from Sansa. Is it that time already, Joy? He replied, feigning surprise. John, story time. Joy insisted, her tone more firm now. If you'll excuse me, apparently it's story time, John said, eliciting laughter from the group. He wasn't surprised when Joy reached out her hand for Sansa, but he was taken aback when she did the same for Marjorie, glancing at him as if seeking permission. He simply smiled, pleased that he would get to spend more time with her. So what, we're not invited? Loras joked. No, Joy said, sticking her tongue out at him. Joy, John admonished, trying to suppress his laughter as he shook his head at her antics. John, she replied in the same playful tone, and he began to regret teaching her that. Loras turned to Brienne and said something that made her laugh, and soon John and the others headed toward Joy's room. As he readied her for bed, he settled into a chair, while Marjorie and Sansa took their places on the chair and bed, respectively. He began to tell them a story about the good Queen Alysanne and her visit to the north. He spoke of how she flew on Silverwing and aided the men of the Night's Watch, recounting how the realm still spoke of her deeds to this day. Once Joy had fallen asleep, they returned to the hall. Brienne, feeling tired, had already gone to bed, leaving Loras sitting alone. The night passed quickly, and Loras escorted Sansa back to her room, allowing John to do the same for Marjorie. So, will I get a dance at the wedding tomorrow? She asked as they reached her room. If you wish it, my lady, then who am I to refuse? He replied, and her smile lit up her face. Really? You're going to dance with me, no jest? She said, her excitement palpable. As well as I can with this, he said, gesturing to his arm. But yes, I'll no doubt have to dance with Joy and my sister, so it would look wrong if I didn't dance with who I wish to dance with as well. Good night, just John, she said, her voice playful. Good night, just Marjorie, he replied, smiling as she stepped into her room. Jaime had dressed impeccably for the wedding in Winterfell, wearing the finest clothes he possessed. However, the outfits he wore today were far beyond anything he had ever donned. The full wealth and power of House Lannister would be on display in less than an hour, and he needed to look the part. His aunt had truly outdone herself, crafting outfits for each of the Lannister men with only slight variations from his own. The outfits for the children were equally impressive. For Jon and Loras, the distinction was even more apparent. While his uncles and brothers wore the full Lannister crimson and black, his squires donned the colors in reverse. At first, Jaime had interpreted this as an insult, not an intentional one, but he knew that bastard colors were often flipped. How his aunt had managed to create such stunning outfits remained a mystery to him, but the two boys looked incredible, their colors only enhancing his own. Jon had even somehow managed to keep his hair neatly styled, which was a. Jaime couldn't help but feel a bit shocked. He had expected he would be forced to have his hair cut. Perhaps being a king granted him some privileges, he mused as he fixed the pins on his coat. And I thought Loras took a long time to get ready. My lord, can we hurry it up here, please? Jon said, and Loras snickered in response. Yes, we must hurry, my lord, or perhaps your good lady will decide not to wait, Loras added with a teasing tone. Have no fear, I think my lady will wait for me, Jaime said, prompting laughter from the others. Aye, she will, Jon agreed, nodding. Well, what do you think? Jaime asked, finally finished with his preparations. Why, maidens will swoon and ladies will throw themselves at your feet, my lord, Loras said dramatically. Not unless they want to be smacked over the head with a mace. Jon retorted, unable to suppress his laughter. We should go, Jaime said at last, and the others nodded in agreement. The September in Casterly Rock was a place he visited rarely, more out of obligation since being named lord than for any personal desire. As he entered and saw the people gathered, he felt a wave of nervousness wash over him. He watched as Loras and Jon took their places beside Tyrion and his uncles. While it was uncommon for them to stand during the ceremony, Jaime wished for it, and the Septon readily agreed, acknowledging his status. If there had been any doubt about how he felt about his squires, that would end tonight. He looked around and spotted Jenna sitting with her husband and children, Joy and Sansa beside them, along with Lyness, who held her babe in her arms. Gerald smiled at that, as did Arthur. Yora would be leading Daisy in soon, and just the thought of her brought a smile to his face. As for Yora himself, Meege had kept her word, and Yora had declared for Jon. Then he saw Oberyn sitting with his paramour and children, a smile on his face that was hard to read. But then he caught sight of her, and nothing else mattered. Daisy was breathtaking. Her dress was pure white, no blemish, no mark, just pristine white. Her dark hair and the maiden cloak were the only contrasts to her radiant gown. The dress was a stunning contrast of colors. Her bare shoulders revealed her pale skin, and with the sunlight streaming behind her, she looked like a vision. His breath caught in his throat, his mouth went dry, and like a young boy, he could only stare. It was only when she moved that the spell was broken. Watching her walk toward him almost compelled him to run to reach her first. When Yora removed her maiden cloak and he draped his own cloak over her, he felt as if he were committing sacrilege. There she stood in her wedding dress, so simple yet so elegant. The beauty of both his wife and the dress she wore was breathtaking, and it felt wrong to cover either one. The dress was exquisitely crafted, intricate details emerged as he took in the sight, the pearls embedded in the fabric, the delicate designs of bears embracing lions in lace. All of it was incredible, but it was the woman wearing it who truly took his breath away. Daisy had never looked more beautiful to him than she did in that moment. He felt as if he might not be able to breathe, terrified that if he moved, she would vanish into thin air, for surely he didn't deserve such perfection. When she smiled up at him, his heart felt so full. He stepped closer, cloaked her, and she turned to face him. The words of the Septon and the psalms being sung faded away as he gazed at her. When he wrapped the ribbon around her hand, they began to speak, and suddenly everything felt real again. Father, Smith, warrior, mother, maiden, crone, stranger. I am hers and she is mine. From this day until the end of my days, he said, smiling as Daisy echoed his words. He looked down at the ribbon he'd wrapped around her hand, feeling it bind them together. But they were connected by so much more than that. Just looking at her and holding her in his arms, he knew they were bound by a deeper love. With this kiss, I pledge my love and take you for my lady and wife. Jaime felt the brief kiss they shared was a promise of the life they would build together. I now declare Lord Jaime and Lady Daisy to be man and wife. They are one flesh, one heart, one soul, now and forever. Now and forever, they echoed in unison. As they walked out of the September, cheers erupted around them. Most of the staff from Casterly Rock would be free to join the celebration that night. In Lannisport, food and drink had been prepared for a large gathering of townspeople. They made their way to the grand ballroom, the largest hall in the castle, and took their seats at the high table, waiting for the guests to arrive. Among those seated with them were his family, Yora and Lyness, the Tyrells, and Prince Oberyn with his paramour. At the front, the lords of the West, Crakehall, Marbrand, Brax, and Lyddon, were positioned according to their rank, along with Lord Redwine and Lord Hightower. Jaime's aunt had meticulously ensured that no one felt overlooked. To the left, the children were the first to arrive. Jaime smiled as he watched Jon take a seat beside Margaery, a true love match indeed. Sansa was in awe of the wedding. It was everything she had hoped for and more. While the ceremony at Winterfell had been wonderful, this one was far more elaborate, and she reveled in the pageantry. Seeing Daisy in her exquisite dress and watching Jaime drape his cloak over her made her heart swell. The ceremony felt more profound, with vows exchanged and love openly declared. The singing, the ambience of the September, it was truly a grand event. As for the feast, nothing in Winterfell could compare. The dishes were beyond her imagination: goose, swan, and pigeon pie. But it was the desserts that truly captivated her. Lemon cakes had always been her favorite, yet the strawberries, peaches, and cream were equally tempting. She found herself wishing to sample everything, a desire Joy seemed to share. Jon Strawbellies, Joy said eagerly. I know. Do you want more, or would you prefer some peach pie? Jon replied. Strawbellies, Jon, the girl insisted, making Sansa laugh. She wished she could make her own choices as easily. Sansa, you must try this, Margaery said, passing her a slice of pie topped with orange cream. What is it? Sansa asked as she took a piece. It's pickled orange pie. Trust me, you'll love it, Margaery assured her. Sansa took a bite, and Margaery was right, it was incredible. As the time for gifts approached, Sansa felt a twinge of unease for not having brought one. She had poured so much effort into the gift she created in Winterfell that she hadn't had time to make another. Daisy had reassured her that it wasn't required, but when Sansa grew anxious, Daisy led her to her and Lord Jaime's room. There, she spotted her gift resting on the bed. Your gift is one I shall always treasure, Sansa. What these others may bring can't compare, Daisy said. Although Sansa felt proud at that moment, a flicker of worry remained. As the gifts were presented, she noticed a lack of thoughtfulness in most of them. They were just typical offerings. However, she found it intriguing when Prince Oberyn presented Lady Daisy with a spear, and the horse gifted by Lord Mace drew a smile from Margaery as she watched Daisy's reaction. When Jon stood up, Sansa hoped he would sing again, but he and Loras instead carried something small and silver in their hands. You're not singing, Jon? Sansa asked when he returned, and Margaery turned to look at him. You can sing? Margaery asked. I can sing, Jon replied softly. Oh please, I'd love to hear you sing. Sansa and Joy would love it too, no doubt. Please, Jon, Margaery urged. But instead of singing, Jon leaned in to whisper in her ear. Jon, I'm sorry. I didn't know, Marjorie said, glancing at Sansa, who looked on in confusion as Jon nodded. No? Sansa asked. My shoulder. It hurts if I speak too loud, so singing would be painful, Jon explained. Jon, I'm sorry. I had no idea. Please forgive me. There's nothing to forgive, little sister. The dancing will start soon, and I hope you're ready to dance a lot tonight, Jon said. Sansa nodded eagerly. When the music began, Joy danced with Jon while Loras twirled with his sister. Sansa felt a bit left out until Willem came over and asked her to dance. After their turn, Martin danced with her, followed by Jon. Having fun? He asked. I am. Your shoulder, I'm not hurting it, am I? She said, her hand barely brushing against his shoulder. No, it's fine. I have some good news, at least I hope it's good. Really? What is it? Marjorie and her grandmother will be staying at the Rock a bit longer. Loras's name day is in a few weeks, so they'll be around until then. That's great. Now I get to celebrate your name day too. You're not upset about not going to Highgarden for a while longer? He asked. Of course not. I get to spend more time with my big brother. How could I be upset? She replied with a smile. As she sat back down, she chatted with Loras and took a moment to rest while Jon asked Marjorie to dance. Watching them together, her big brother and the friend she hoped to grow closer to, made her heart warm. She and Marjorie had shared a few conversations, and Sansa felt a connection. She was really looking forward to the time they would spend together. Throughout the night, Sansa danced a few more times. Once, she twirled with an older boy who had silver hair and spoke of Jon as if he knew him well. Another time, she danced with Lancel, who she found quite annoying and very different from his brothers. By the time the night was halfway through, she was exhausted. She yawned and wished she had left when Joy was taken to bed. Instead, she watched Jon dance with Marjorie again, sighing at their energy. When they returned to the table, both of them were laughing about something, but when Jon noticed her, he stopped. Are you well, Sansa? He asked. Just tired, she replied. Do you wish to retire? He asked. She nodded. I'll take you back to your room. It's fine, Jon, she replied, not wanting to pull him away from the fun he was having. Sansa, he said with determination, and she gave him a small smile before taking his arm. I'll be back in a few moments, unless you'd like to join us, he asked. Marjorie turned to walk with them. As they made their way from the room, Sansa found herself so tired that she leaned into Jon, almost letting him carry her weight. When they reached her room, she said her goodnights and nearly fell into bed. She had never felt so exhausted, the excitement of the day and the feast had worn her out completely. When she took off her shoes, she felt Fawn lick her toes, making her giggle. She lifted the wolf onto her bed before undressing and wrapping herself in the covers. Jon. The gift he had gotten for Jaime and Daisy was a silver pin depicting a bear and a lion together. He had sketched the design himself and had two made, one for Daisy and one for Jaime. Loras and Jon had split the costs since it was from both of them. When he presented it, he was surprised when Sansa mentioned singing, even more so when Marjorie asked him to sing for her. He promised he would do so privately, knowing it couldn't happen in public, and she understood. Dancing had been enjoyable. Joy knew all the moves since Jenna had sent her to lessons, but she was never going to act ladylike with Jon if she could help it. With Jenna busy chatting with Olenna, Joy seized her chance. Instead of dancing like everyone else, she treated Jon to her own version, pulling him in whatever direction she wished. He couldn't help but laugh the entire time and even danced in front of Jenna just to see her scowl. "Auntie mad, Jon?" Joy asked. She is," he replied, and she giggled. "I say sorry." "You're not sorry." "I say it," she insisted, and he laughed at the little girl. A smirk played on her face. After dancing with joy and bringing her back to her seat, he and Sansa took to the dance floor. He could see his sister was truly enjoying herself. Loras had danced with her twice, and both Martin and Willem had also taken their turns. Yet, Sansa was eager to dance with him, and they shared a few dances before he finally got the chance to ask Marjorie. "I'm sorry for not telling you about the singing," he said. "You promised to sing privately." "I shall hold you to that, just John." "I'll never break a promise to you, just Marjorie," he replied, making her smile. "I like this. Dancing? Dancing with you, here, with people watching. Why? You're a good dancer, John." "No, I mean, why does it make a difference if people can see?" he asked. I don't know. It just does. "I like not hiding," she admitted, and he agreed it was nice to be free from the shadows. "One day, I won't have to hide anymore," he said, and this time, she smiled. "I know." They danced countless times for the rest of the night. John barely had a moment to sit down before he returned to find Sansa tired. Not surprised, he walked back to her room with her and Marjorie, ensuring she was comfortable before they headed back to the feast. No sooner had they returned to the room than a dark-skinned girl joined them, introducing herself as Sarella, one of Prince Oberyn's daughters. "You're Jon Snow?" she asked, looking at him intently. "I am, my lady." "Not lady. My name is Sarella. I wanted to ask you about those ships you built." "I didn't build them." "But they were your idea, were they not?" "They were John's idea," Marjorie interjected. "How?" "I'm sorry?" John asked, confused. "How did you come up with the idea?" "I've seen them, they're amazing, unlike any that sail." "How did you come up with them? Do you always question people so?" Marjorie said, a hint of annoyance creeping into her tone. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to sound like that. It's just that knowledge, the search for it, intrigues me. I'd love to study at the Citadel one day," Sarella said wistfully. "Why don't you?" John asked. "Women aren't allowed, John," Marjorie replied. "That's stupid." "Why not?" John looked between them. "It's how the Maesters decided it. They believe women aren't cut out for knowledge," Sarella explained. "That's the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. Only a fool would think like that. If that's their mindset, it's better for you to learn your knowledge elsewhere," John said, and Sarella smiled at him. "You really think a woman is capable of being a maester?" she asked. "I think the only thing a woman can't be is a man. Anything else, a woman can be or do." "I know plenty of women who are far cleverer than men," he said, glancing at Marjorie, who blushed at his words. "So you wouldn't mind sharing your knowledge with me then?" Sarella inquired, and John noticed Marjorie giving him an odd look. "I would share what I can, but perhaps another time," he replied, and Sarella nodded before leaving. "Do you think you should, John?" Marjorie asked once the girl had gone. "I have no idea. I'm not very clever, you see," he said, and she frowned at him. Before he could continue, he smirked and added, "John, that's not funny." It was. Just a little, right? Come on, you can tell me. I can see you wish to smile. She held her frown for a moment longer before bursting into laughter. "You are terrible," she said, still laughing. As for Oberyn, the wedding turned out to be a far more pleasant affair than he had expected. Lady Dacey looked beautiful, and even Ellaria held her chest in surprise when she saw her. As for Jaime, despite any feelings he may have had about the man, it was clear he loved his bride, and for that, Oberyn respected him a little. It was rare to wed for love in this world. Being in a September felt strange for him. He was the last person anyone would call religious. Despite being raised in the faith, he didn't follow it or practice it. He found its rules and limitations disagreeable, and its condemnation of children for their parents' actions was abhorrent. In the eyes of the seven, his children were bastards. In the eyes of most of the kingdom, they were considered lesser because of their birth, not their worth. Yet here was Oberyn Martell, the father of those very same bastards, a prince and a respected man. It was the worst kind of hypocrisy. To the hells with the seven and their rules, he would live and die by his own standards. When they arrived at the grand ballroom, he braced himself for an insult, only to find none forthcoming. His children were given a respectful seat, and he and Ellaria were to sit at the high table. He felt Ellaria grip his hand tightly, sensing her nervousness mingled with the relief of not being excluded. As they sat down, Ellaria struck up a conversation with Lyness about her baby and the longing for their own. Meanwhile, he found himself enjoying a chat with Geryon. They ate, drank, and the evening unfolded without incident. He was having such a good time that he even ignored the disapproving looks from Mace Tyrell. When it was time to dance, he nearly dragged Ellaria to the floor, eager to have her in his arms. "Are you enjoying the night, my love?" he asked. "I am. They are far better hosts than I had hoped," she replied. "They are, and I'm glad they seated us here," he said, his words sincere for Ellaria. "It was a surprise, was it not?" She smiled. "It was, though it's only how it should be," he said, leaning in to kiss her. They danced and drank, sharing laughter, especially when some poor fool asked Oberyn to dance, leaving only his pride injured. He moved on to dance with his daughters, all of whom seemed to be enjoying themselves, though he noticed Sarella was nowhere to be found. When he returned to his seat, he asked Ellaria about her. She pointed to the table where the Lannister children sat, and he wondered what had brought Sarella there. He waited until he saw her go to her sisters, then walked over, taking her hand to dance with her. "What are you up to, daughter?" he asked. "Nothing," she replied, her tone genuinely innocent. "Sarella," Oberyn said, his voice warm. "I spoke to Jon Snow, father. I wanted to ask him about those ships and some of the other things he said he's done." "My sweet, curious child," he replied, kissing her forehead softly. "What did he say?" "He said he would speak to me about what he could." "He seems different, father." "Different?" Oberyn inquired. "He doesn't think it's right that women aren't given knowledge, that we're not allowed to learn." "It isn't right. Women are just as clever as men, more so in some cases," he said, smiling at her. "He said the same," she said, returning his smile. Oberyn would have found that interesting, but just then, they spotted it, the black cat, grabbing something from a table and darting out of the room. He kissed his daughter again and followed. When he caught up, he was stunned to see himself surrounded by two wolves. No, not wolves, dire wolves. One was just a pup, but the other was as large as a horse. For the first time in a long while, fear gripped him as the large dire wolf looked at him. Its red eyes and white fur marked it as something unlike any wolf he had ever heard of. It didn't make a sound as it approached, while the black pup growled fiercely. Oberyn wondered if he could even back away at this point. Would the wolf attack? He reached for the small dagger he kept at his side. He heard footsteps behind him, but he was too afraid to break eye contact with the wolf. "Ghost, to me," a voice commanded. The wolf stopped staring at him and ran silently behind him, while the black cat scurried the opposite way. "I thank you," Oberyn said, turning to see a young boy with dark hair. "Don't mention it, my prince," the boy replied. "You have me at a disadvantage," Oberyn said. "Apologies, my prince." "I'm Jon Snow," the boy said. As he smiled, Oberyn felt his heart skip a beat.